All right, so we'll get started. Thank you everyone so much for joining us, and welcome to the Let's Talk Parkinson's session. My name is Erin Pickering with the Ottawa Hospital Foundation, and I'll be your host for this session. We have an incredible panel of experts in Parkinson's research joining us today. We're going to start by hearing from some of them, and then we'll open it up to a brief Q&A. So you can type your questions in at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And I'll share as many as I can with our experts. So to start things off, I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Juliana Tomlinson. Dr. Tomlinson is a senior research associate in Dr. Michael Schlossmacher's lab at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute and co-leads the research activities of the lab. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Tomlinson. I'll dive right in, as I understand you recently published an exciting paper on how understanding the Parkin protein can inform new approaches to early onset Parkinson's. Can you tell us a little bit more about this research?
Hi, Erin. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. So in Parkinson's disease, it's very specific cells in the brain that die. And in order for us to come up with new drugs to be able to save or protect these cells in the brain, we really have to understand what's going wrong. So what is causing these cells to die in the first place? And that's what we do in the lab. As you said, I work with Dr. Schlossmacher, and we're focused on really trying to understand the mechanisms behind this disease. And so one such study is the one that you just mentioned, that we're really excited about, that just got published. And this represents over 10 years of work for us, very dedicated graduate student and team of people coming together. And so we focused on a protein called Parkin, the Parkin protein. So this specific protein is linked to young onset forms of the disease. So if a person doesn't make this protein for genetic reasons, they end up getting an early onset form of Parkinson's disease. So whatever this protein is doing in the brain, in these cells, it's critical, because if it's not there, if it's not doing its job, then these cells die in the brain. And so we wanted to understand what this protein was doing. And we found, again, that this protein, it acts like an antioxidant. So we figured out that it acts like a sponge to soak up harmful molecules in these cells. So these molecules, if they're left unchecked, they can create a lot of damage to these cells and kill them. So Parkin is protecting against these molecules by acting as a sponge. So now that we know this, we can look ahead to what might this mean for new therapies. So if we know a person is missing this protein, so is lacking that sponge ability, then can we replace it with maybe antioxidant therapies? And would this then help protect these cells from dying in these people that are at risk for the disease? That's a very quick overview, again, of over 10 years of studies, international collaborations, and teamwork. But
Sure. Well, it sounds very exciting, and I'm sure we'll all be interested to hear more as this research develops.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as I'm sure many others are, what has it been like to conduct this research throughout the pandemic? How has your team adapted?
As I'm sure it is for everybody, it's definitely had a big impact, and it's had its challenges. So very immediately, over a year ago, our research activities were shut down, except for the very critical stuff that was allowed to keep going. But slowly it did open back up. We're not at 100% capacity in the labs right now. We're at reduced capacity. A reduced number of people are allowed to be there at once. But we've adapted, and we're making it work. And I think, it, again, like I think everybody's experiencing, it's really shown the resiliency and the dedication of our entire team to do this. And importantly, we have a lot of graduate students that work with us. It's a very pivotal time of their career. They need this, to graduate, but they've all completely committed. And I think it's also strengthened the teamwork, because we've had to, because if, we have team members with kids in school, waiting testing, people have had to isolate, and other people are jumping right in to help, to do what they can to help the other team members And I think it makes us really appreciative of each other, of the people that are committed in the building, the facilities, everybody that's on the site to help us get our research going. So, you know, we've adapted and we're making it work, but we certainly miss being able to all be in there together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we'll get there.
We're all thrilled that you've adapted so well and had such good results with your research.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tomlinson. I'm delighted now to introduce Dr. Tiago Mestre. Dr. Mestre is an associate scientist of the Neuroscience Program at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, as well as a neurologist at the Ottawa Hospital and associate professor of neurology at the University of Ottawa. Dr. Mestre also leads the implementation of treatment programs for advanced Parkinson's patients at the Ottawa Hospital, including deep brain stimulation and Duodopa. And today, Dr. Mestre, I'd like to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about the Duodopa pump treatment and how it can help reduce Parkinson's disease symptoms.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. And I think it's a pleasure that we're able to touch base even virtually with the Parkinson's community in Ottawa. So the Duodopa program, now we've started in the last few years. We with the Duodopa and to the same extent with deep brain stimulation, we are trying to address the problems that people with Parkinson's disease developed as they have a short duration response to their medications, to the levodopa. So this is what commonly is called motor fluctuations, the ons and the offs, but also the involuntary movements that come with the benefit that people with Parkinson's get with levodopa, and so the dyskinesias. And so when medications are no longer sufficient to treat these symptoms, or we think that pragmatically they will not, a new trial of this medication will not reach a desired benefit, we can think about Duodopa, which in simple terms is the possibility of taking levodopa continuously, at least during the day. So it's a pump that allows to administer levodopa with the other compound called carbidopa in a gel that is continuously released to the gut. And so not only this idea that the patient and the brain with Parkinson's disease is receiving levodopa on a continuous basis, but also that by doing that, by releasing it in the gut, we are overcoming some issues, for example, with slowness of stomach emptying that can also in itself delay the response to individual dose. And so ultimately, what the studies say and what we experience in our program is that patients do have an incredible benefit in terms of improvement of their on time with good quality and reduction of the off time, so the times when patients are experiencing the troublesome Parkinson's symptoms. That's kind of in a nutshell and broadly what this therapy means.
Sure, thank you. Well, very promising. And on the topic of treatment, I understand as well there have been several drugs recently approved in Canada for treating Parkinson's disease. Can you share any more details about these with us?
Yeah, so interesting. The new drugs available for Parkinson's disease is within that same stage of the Parkinson's. So to address issues with motor fluctuations, and so broadly, we've had now more than a year ago, I believe, a drug that was approved, and which the target was to help patients recover fast from a off time. Sometimes taking a levodopa medication, even if patients try to chew on the medication and make it fast absorption, is not enough. So these medications try to rescue patients from off time as fast as possible. And so the first medication that was introduced in Canadian market actually is a PanJet, so that allows for subcutaneous injection of a medication that is called apomorphine. And more recently, what we have is kind of a different version of the same drug, but perhaps it's easier to use, where patients have a strip, they put it under the tongue and allow for the benefit to kick in. And we're starting to have some experience with that. Both medications, they do require at least for the time being, for the patient to come to our clinic for the first dose and initial titration. So this is perhaps in this context of the pandemics and right now, it could be a little bit challenging, but we're trying to overcome it, of course.
Of course. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Mestre, for joining us and for sharing your expertise. We'd like to open it up to questions now. So a reminder to type any of your questions by clicking on Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And if your question is for a specific panelist, please do indicate that. I'm delighted to introduce two additional experts who are joining us for this portion. Dr. David Grimes is an associate scientist at the Neuroscience Program at OHRI. He's director of the Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorders Clinic, division head and professor of neurology at U Ottawa, and co-director of the Parkinson Research Consortium. And thrilled to welcome and reintroduce Dr. Michael Schlossmacher, who we heard from in the first half. Because we likely won't get to everyone's questions, I will encourage everyone to check out the resource page back on the home screen of the event after this session. On the left-hand side, we've put together more information on Parkinson's research and the programs underway. So I'll jump in with the first question, which is for Dr. Grimes. Dr. Grimes, the COVID-19 vaccine is, of course, top of mind for everyone right now. What can you tell us about the vaccines in terms of their safety for Parkinson's patients?
So, yeah, great question. And again, thank you for putting on the event. There certainly has been a lot of work looking at, subpopulations, including people with Parkinson's. And I think the bottom line is that the vaccines are safe, and would encourage everyone with Parkinson's to get vaccinated as soon as they're eligible. It's nice to see in Ottawa that our numbers are dropping in terms of the age categories. And so although there's not a specific kind of move up the ladder that people with Parkinson's can get, I think for most people with Parkinson's, they qualify just on age alone. So would certainly encourage everyone to get vaccinated as soon as it's possible for them.
Good news, I'd say. Thank you, Dr. Grimes. Next question for Dr. Mestre. Could you give us just the difference between DBS, deep brain stimulation, and Duodopa?
Yeah, so deep brain stimulation implies a continuous electric stimulation to the brain. Is kind of a pacemaker to the brain. And so from a concept, I mean, we have this concept of a continuous treatment that is being delivered, but DBS is through electric stimulation, and usually it's 24/7, while Duodopa most of the time, so it's more a continuous pharmacological stimulation based on levodopa, and while one requires a neurosurgery to implant the lead that allows for delivery of the stimulation, Duodopa requires the placement of a tube that crosses the belly into the stomach, and patients need to carry a pump that is delivered, that allows for that delivery to be continuous inside the gut. I would just perhaps make a small extra information that currently, and the trials actually were ongoing before the pandemic hit us, that, for example, there's a new version of Duodopa being trialed. Instead of being administration through the gut, actually is just under the skin. And so for someone that will be familiar with diabetes, for example, it's kind of the same concept as a insulin pump for patients with diabetes. So that, if it comes true in terms of clinical practice, will be, I think, a very exciting new option. And I think my estimate that if that comes true, then we'll replace this Duodopa concept. Will be the same continuous pharmacologic stimulation, but in the more simple terms and more convenient terms.
That's promising to hear that more developments are being made. Thank you. So let's see, the next question, I'll ask Dr. Tomlinson, back to the Parkin protein. One of our questions, could it be manufactured almost like a protein powder and be administered as a drug in those that are missing?
That's an excellent question. And yes, I mean, ultimately, we would love for Parkin replacement therapy to be able to be a reality. And to replace this protein, I mean, the challenge is to get it into the brain. And so that's sort of where we go from here, as well as other insights this study has given us. But, you know, if we could do that, that would, you know, the first obvious population being the young onset cases. And you know, could it help those people that carry mutations in their Parkin gene, and maybe even the at risk. So those people, if we can identify them before the motor symptoms appear, could we help protect those cells before they start to die in people that we knew carried mutations in their Parkin gene? And then ultimately, possibly even, and I mean, this is, you know, what we work on is to try and understand if these are possible or would help, but in you know, typical Parkinson disease, in that that idea of those oxidants, so those molecules that can damage these cells. We know that the cells that die make a lot of these. And so could a Parkin-based therapy work, you know, for typical Parkinson disease too in the future, is also maybe possible. But this is really where we go from here in trying to study these and to test these therapies. And then, yeah, that's where we're going. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Great questions coming in. I'll move right along. We have a question about cannabinoids. So I'm not sure who might be the best to answer, but the question is, do cannabinoids help decrease Parkinson's disease pain and tremors, or could they increase the risk of accelerating stages through Parkinson's?
Dr. Grimes.
So again, great question. Certainly all the cannabis, marijuana related products are getting a lot of press these days. The difficulty is that specifically for Parkinson's disease, we don't have any really good studies that are well designed and well conducted that show that cannabis is a good idea. We certainly, for all of us who look after people with Parkinson's, and a lot of people with Parkinson's have tried them. And for some people, they feel they help, and other people, they just don't feel there's any benefit at all. And so this is definitely an area where we need more research. Dr. Mestre has been working very hard at trying to get a study going. And again, specifically looking at people with Parkinson's disease who have pain, because we know that seems to be the biggest area where cannabis products has been shown to be beneficial is in pain. And I think the big question is, especially when there's more THC in the compounds, you know, how well is it tolerated? And so the more THC, the more risk there is for people with Parkinson's in terms of causing more troubles with balance, causing more troubles with drowsiness, and then leading to more falls, and also having more difficulties with concentration. And so I think it's, again, like a lot of medications and treatments that we have, it's one of those risk versus benefits and balancing out those side effects versus the potential benefits. So the unfortunate answer is right now we don't have a clear answer, but hopefully in the future we will. But again, I think it's important to really have that caveat in there that there are potential risks from using these, as I said, especially the higher THC compounds.
Of course, definitely an area where more research is starting to be conducted and needed across the board for a lot of different diseases. We have a few more questions coming in about Duodopa, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Mestre again. Which symptoms is the Duodopa treatment most successful at treating? And kind of second half of the question, you know, are there any side effects that come particularly with the last drug you mentioned? Not with Duodopa, but with the strip that goes underneath the tongue. So two different questions.
Yeah. So in terms of Duodopa, kind of the rule of thumb is whatever symptoms improved with the levodopa pill, we expect them to improve with Duodopa, but with the extra advantage that the effect is more prolonged, more consistent throughout the day. And perhaps that's the greatest benefit we get with Duodopa. Sometimes dyskinesia, so the excess movements that come with the benefit of a pill of levodopa, particularly in some type of patients, can be challenging to treat more on the long run with Duodopa. So it's something that we always have in consideration when you are selecting the candidates for the program. Not necessarily that they will not qualify for the program, but at least in terms of determining what to expect after the treatment. In terms, I think in terms of tolerability of this medication, and I'll then speak about the sublingual strip. So in terms of just kind of in terms of the Duodopa, the main concerns are actually is not with the levodopa, because patients have been on this medication usually for many years, so we expect them to tolerate it well. It's more with the gastroenteric part of the device, and so most of the issues are related with the pump, the tube, and gastric complications, gastroenterology complications we can get that. On average, patients need to replace the tube annually. And that has been shown in literature, but also that has been our experience. And so hopefully that's why I say the subcutaneous version might, allow us to not to deal with those issues, and the patients might be, again, more convenient for patients. In terms of the sublingual strip, so the main side effects, aside from local side effects of a product that is administered in the tongue or under the tongue, so some irritation or redness, the side effects come because it's a different drug. So it's a dopamine agonist. And so we are particularly aware, for example, things such as drop in blood pressure, or for example, sleepiness. And that's why, for example, main reason why patients, when they first take the drug, it's done in the clinic to control for that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Mestre. I think we have time for just at least one last question. For Dr. Schlossmacher, somebody's been reading your bio and seeing that you've trained all over the world and studied all over the world, really. What brought you here to Ottawa and to the Ottawa Hospital?
Thank you, Erin, and hello, everybody. That's funny. That's a question almost for somebody who recently arrived. I've been here now for 15 years and have spent the same amount of time in Boston. So the three main reasons are I had convinced my wife to come to Canada. We wanted to move to Canada. Number two, I love living in a capital city with all the amenities. And number three, and that's probably the most important one, is the collaborative spirit that you've heard about earlier, and that many of us feel Ottawa really brings to the task of solving difficult problems. And the short answer is that in an institution that's not as old and big, you get usually more collaborative spirit. In institutions that have a long history and are very large, people don't work with each other as effectively for many different reasons. So I read about what Dr. Grimes and his colleagues were doing, and at that time, Dr. Mestre wasn't here yet. And I think I want to say I haven't regretted it every single day of being here and working with so many different people, and also people in the foundation, with our community and our patients, our students. I think it's been absolutely wonderful, and I'm extremely grateful. So on behalf of everybody, I want to say to our community too that they've played a pivotal role and made working on Parkinson's a real pleasure. And we continue to want to make improvements every single week, every single month, to deliver on the promise of what people expect of us and what they've invested in us.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, I certainly echo your comments about community support, and I think we're all thrilled that you ended up here in Ottawa, as well as all of our researchers here today. We're going to wrap up today's session by hearing from two members of our Parkinson's community here in Ottawa. The first is Andrew Frank, co-chair, along with Kim Taryn, of Piper, a phenomenal group that I have the privilege of working with. And then we'll hear from Shelby Hayter, who will present the inaugural Bruce Hayter Outstanding Caregiver Award. So I'll pass it over to you, Andrew.
Hello, my name is Andrew Frank, and I'm proud to be a founding member of a group called Partners Investing in Parkinson's Research, known as Piper. We're a group of dedicated individuals and families, all affected by Parkinson's disease. When we came together in 2009, our stated goals were to raise awareness of Parkinson's and to raise a lofty $500,000 for research at the Ottawa Hospital. And while we've been successful in our endeavors, we've raised $1.5 million to date, and we've got some pretty good press around Ottawa. One of the unforeseen benefits of Piper is how it's become a support group for all of us who participate in our events. Few understand how Parkinson's affects a family, and it's helpful to share experiences in a safe and welcoming environment. The research advancements that you heard about today are so important to all of us. And community support is crucial to assisting the researchers to raise much needed funds from foundations and governments. The majority of Piper's fundraising is done through the Ottawa Race Weekend on an annual basis. We come together in person or virtually in support of Parkinson's research at the Ottawa Hospital right here in our community. This year, our stated goal is to raise another $100,000 and to give hope to those who live with Parkinson's disease. We call it Living Well with Parkinson's. We are always welcoming new members, and if any of you are interested in participating or learning more, please feel free to reach out to us. In fact, our next meeting is next Thursday. Our next Zoom meeting is next Thursday, and if you're interested in learning more, please reach out to Aaron Pickering or any of the fantastic people at the Ottawa Hospital Foundation. Thank you, and hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name's Shelby Hayter, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's about 16 years ago. My husband, Bruce, was a devoted husband and a selfless caregiver right up until the day he passed away just over a year ago. Now, the Ottawa Hospital Foundation recognized that Bruce was an exceptional caregiver, and so together we established the Bruce Hayter Outstanding Caregiver Award that would be an annual award, and it would be in his honor. So a committee was formed, and the outline was discussed as to the characteristics of a possible candidate, and these were all characteristics that came so naturally to Bruce. Ones like commitment, compassion, support, and Bruce always had a little something extra. Now, before I announce the recipients of the award, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Bruce, the inspiration behind the award. So he was an Air Force pilot, and he flew all across the country and even abroad. But his favorite place in the whole world was his cottage in Muskoka. He built the cottage of his dreams, did a lot of the handiwork up there. And so it's fitting that the award is rustic and unique. This is actually an example of the disc that he cut. He cut this a couple summers ago, and I was going to make them into message boards for our cottage. And when the Ottawa Hospital Foundation mentioned that they were looking for an award, I showed them this, and they thought that that was perfect. So my 3 adult children and myself are thrilled at the gesture to honor Bruce, and he would be truly humbled. Now, I guess it's time to announce the 2021 recipients. I'm going to read this off. The first recipient is Joe Templin. He is the husband and caregiver of Alice Templin. And the second person that we've considered is Bobby Driscoll. She is the wife and caregiver to John Ton. Now, a little bit about Alice. A little bit about Joe. Alice describes Joe as her ideal partner, showing extraordinary commitment to supporting her in all aspects of their lives that Parkinson's has opened up, and as a devoted advocate in the Parkinson community by participating in local and international events. And now Bobby. Bobby was a founding member of the Piper team and a driving force of the team's success. Bobby is a tremendous source of strength, positivity, and energy, to John in navigating the challenges living with Parkinson's disease. Congratulations, it is very heartfelt, and thank you so much, Joe and Bobby, for all that you do.
Thank you, Shelby. Such an inspiring way to honor the memory of Bruce. And congratulations, Bobby and Joe. Thank you, Piper, for your continued support and dedication. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's session. Thank you to our experts, Dr. Tomlinson, Dr. Grimes, Dr. Mestre, and Dr. Schlossmacher. In just a moment, we'll all be redirected back to the main page of the event, where we'll hear just a few closing remarks from Tim Klug. And a reminder that if we didn't get to your questions, you can check out the resource tab on the left side of the screen where there's more information. Please do feel free to contact me if you'd like to learn more about Parkinson's research at the Ottawa Hospital. And I'm going to be interrupted at any moment now as we're redirected back. So just want to thank everyone again. And hopefully we can do this in person sooner than later. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you for attending. Thank you, Erin.